In every war, nations keep records. Generals write reports. Governments write history. But the truth, the real truth, often survives in the hands of ordinary people. In the margins of notebooks, on scraps of paper torn from ration packaging, pressed between pages that were never meant to last. During the Second World War, millions marched across continents, but few carried a voice. Only the civilians, nurses, soldiers, mothers, and children who wrote in secret, in fear, in grief, and sometimes in hope, were able to leave behind a private world untouched by propaganda. Today, their words remain the most honest window into the real human cost of the war. Most of these diaries were never published. Some were hidden under floorboards for decades. Some were discovered only after their writers died, and some survived against impossible odds, carried through bombings, starvation, prison camps, and winter marshes. Tonight, we uncover 6 of the rarest and most powerful World War II diaries, writings that changed what historians know about the war, because they came directly from the people who lived it. Diaries that captured moments no official camera ever filmed. Grief that statistics failed to measure. Truths governments sometimes preferred not to discuss. These are not the diaries found in classrooms.
Not the famous ones.
Not the ones turned into movies or political symbols. These are the hidden diaries. Fragile, emotional, and raw. Many translated only recently, and some still unread by the world. But before we begin, take one moment to imagine this. You are a teenage girl sitting in a freezing apartment in 1943. The city outside is burning. You can hear boots, explosions, screams, and you know that history will never tell the full story of what happened here. So you're right, not for survival, but for memory, for someone, anyone, in the future to understand what you lived through. And somehow, your words survive. This documentary is not just about the war. It is about memory. It is about humanity. It is about the voices that refused to disappear. Tonight, we dive into top 6 hidden World War II diaries that changed what we know. These 6 diaries altered historical understanding, revealing truths about occupied cities, frontline hospitals, resistance movements, and children's experiences historians never fully grasped until these pages came to light. But they also challenge us today. They ask, what would you write if everything around you was falling apart? What would you want the world to remember? Each story is a world. Each diary a rebellion. Each writer a witness history almost lost. Before we begin this journey, if you believe these forgotten voices deserve to be heard, take one moment to subscribe. Your support allows this channel to bring hidden history to life with accuracy, respect, and the truth these people fought to preserve. Our first hidden diary comes from a woman who was never supposed to write anything at all. Her name was Irana, a Polish nurse working in a battlefield aid station on the Eastern Front in 1943. Her diary, only 42 pages, written in pencil, survived a fire that destroyed her hospital, killing almost everyone inside. The diary was found decades later inside a rusted ammunition box, sealed under collapsed rubble. The metal casing protected the pages from heat, water, and time. And what she recorded inside changed historians' understanding of battlefield medical conditions forever. The diary opens a hospital without rest. I have not slept in 3 days. The wounded come in waves, screaming, whispering, sometimes silent. We stitched until our fingers bleed. We bandage until the cloth runs out, and then we tear our own clothes. The men keep asking when help will come. I do not tell them that there is no more help. Historians once believed that frontline field stations followed strict medical protocols. Irana's diary revealed something different: chaos, scarcity, and an endless stream of wounded that no staff could ever truly save. She writes, "Today I treated a boy no older than 16. He had lost both legs. He asked if he would ever dance again. I told him yes. She lied to give him peace. And she wrote the truth so the world would understand the cost of that lie. The night the sky turned to fury on March 11, 1943. Irana describes a night attack that destroyed everything. A German artillery barrage targeted a supply road, but the shells fell short, slamming into the field hospital instead. The sky is bright red. The ground shakes as if the earth itself is breaking. We are pulling the wounded onto the tables, under the beds, anywhere. I can hear the screams of the men burning in the tent next to ours. Most wartime medical records from this region were lost. Without Irana's diary, the scale of these hospital losses would have remained unknown. When the fire spread, the nurses tried to carry the wounded out, but smoke filled the tents faster than anyone could run. I cannot see. My hair is burning. The roof is falling. I drag a man by his uniform. He is heavy. I am tired, but I cannot leave him. I think I am going to die here. She survived by crawling through a narrow gap between two collapsed beams. By dawn, over 70 soldiers and 12 medical staff were dead. The hospital no longer existed. Only her diary documented the event. The truth? Her diary arrivés, writing forced historians to revisit how under-equipped frontline hospitals really were. The diary showed running water was almost non-existent. Medical instruments were shared between dozens of patients without sterilization. Surgery often had to be performed without anesthesia. Nurses worked 48 to 72 hours without sleep. Plasma, bandages, and antibiotics were critically scarce. Her entries showed a battlefield, reality far more brutal than most wartime governments admitted at the time. One historian wrote, "Her diary is the closest we have to a camera inside a dying hospital." Her last EONTRY, the final dated page in her diary, is written with shaky handwriting, the pencil nearly worn to dust. If this is my last day, let this book survive. Let someone read it and remember the men who died calling for their mothers. We could not save them all, but we tried. God knows we tried. After this entry, her handwriting fades. Historians believe she may have collapsed from exhaustion or burns. Irana did survive the war, but she never wrote again. She died in 1968. Her diary was discovered in 1992 during reconstruction of an old farmhouse built on the hospital. Ruins. Her family never knew she had written anything. Why this diary changed HIST or YB? Because Irana wrote without censorship, without orders, and without hope of publication. Her diary is one of the most honest battlefield medical records ever discovered, as showed the emotional collapse of medical staff under impossible strain, the real conditions of Eastern Front casualty stations, the silent heroism of nurses whose work was rarely documented, the human cost of artillery mistakes never recorded in official reports. Most importantly, she showed that, even in the darkest hours, human compassion still burned. Even in a fire that consumed everything else. If Irana's courage moved you, share this video so her voice reaches more people. These diaries survived the war, but only you can help their truth survive today. Some of the most haunting voices of the Second World War belong to those who should never have had to write anything at all. Children in burned cities, in shattered neighborhoods, in basements turned into shelters. Some children picked up pencils and recorded what they saw. Most of these writings are only a few pages long. Many are filled with spelling mistakes, drawings, and childish vocabulary that makes the reality behind them even harder to bear. But one diary, hidden in a wall of a collapsed home in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, is unlike any other. It was written by an 11-year-old girl named Els van der Meer during the German bombing raids of 1941. She did not survive the war, but her diary did. And today, her words remain one of the clearest windows into what urban bombardment looked like through the eyes of a child. A child writes as her city FLS. The diary begins with a simple, innocent sentence. Mama says, "Writing will help me stop shaking. The airplanes come every night. I do not like the noise they make. It sounds like the sky is angry with us." Her first entries described fear, not war. Fear of darkness. Fear of sirens. Fear of sleeping with shoes on in case we must run. She writes about hiding with her mother and baby brother in a cellar as the city above them burned. The walls shake like a giant is walking outside. We hold each other so we do not fall. The innocence of her words, juxtaposed with the devastation around her, is almost unbearable. The naive honesty of a WIT and SS1 entry shows the cruelty of total war in its purest form. Today we went outside after the noise stopped. There was a house missing. Only smoke. I think our neighbor is still inside. Mama said not to look. But I looked. There was a toy horse in the street, and it was on fire. No official report can describe destruction like this. Els did not understand politics. She did not know why bombs fell. She only knew what she saw, and she recorded it with painful honesty. Later, she writes, I asked Mama if the airplanes know we are children. She cried. Life between air RIDs. Not every page is filled with explosions. Some entries reveal how civilians tried to live a life in the ruins. Els writes about standing in bread lines for hours, her mother trading jewelry for food, baby brother coughing from smoke missing, school missing, her friends who fled the city. One passage breaks even the coldest heart. I don't remember what my school looks like. I want to sit at my desk again. I want to draw. I want the loud airplanes to go away forever. She was 11 years old. She wrote like a child trying to understand a world that had stopped making sense. The diary nearly ended on May 14, 1940. Rotterdam suffered one of the most destructive bombing raids in Western Europe. Els was in the cellar with her mother when the bombs fell. She recorded every moment. There is no light. We hear screaming. Mama is praying. The dust is in my teeth. The ground is moving. The house is sick. Then her writing changes. The pencil strokes become shorter, scattered. Mama says, we cannot get out. I am holding my brother. It is hard to breathe. What happens next is known only through the condition of the house that was later excavated. Part of the building collapsed. The cellar caved in. Els did not survive. Her mother, critically wounded, died 3 days later in a temporary field shelter. Only the baby survived, taken in by relatives, who never knew about the diary. It remained hidden in the ruins for 54 years. A discovery that shook HISTORNS in 1994. During reconstruction work in a residential district of Rotterdam, workers found a small metal box inside a partly preserved wall cavity. Inside were dolls Alma Ribbena, small tin Celerend, the diary of Els van der Meer. Dutch National Archives authenticated the notebook. What made her diary exceptional wasn't just the innocence in her writing, it was the detail. She unknowingly recorded Bompetter shelter, Kandisisfud shorta Jesti, order of destruction, civilian atmosphere. Between raids, her chronological accuracy matched military records, something no historian expected from a child writer. Her diary provided a civilian perspective that military documents lacked. The last line she ever wrote, the final entry, ends abruptly. If I wake up tomorrow, I will draw the sun again. She never got the chance. Why this diary changed HISTOR Wills's diary reshaped the understanding of wartime civilian trauma because it showed how children processed bombardment emotionally. It revealed the psychological impact of constant air raids. It preserved day-to-day life under siege better than most adult accounts. It captured small details, toys, drawings, questions that humanized the war. It proved that innocence can witness horror with a clarity adults often cannot. Her diary is now displayed in Rotterdam as part of a permanent exhibition titled Little Voices of a Great War.
Elsa's voice, small, fragile.
Honest has outlived the bombs that took everything away from her. If Elle's story touched you, comment, remember Els? We honor these lost voices together. Some of the most powerful testimonies of World War II did not come from soldiers, generals, or world leaders. Sometimes they came from the hands of a child trying to understand the end of his world. This is the diary of Marek Zielinski, an 11-year-old boy trapped inside the Warsaw Ghetto. His words were never meant to be read by millions. He wrote them to survive one more night. Marek Zielinski was born in Warsaw in 1930. His father, Piotr, was a tailor. His mother, Elżbieta, a schoolteacher. when the Germans created the Warsaw Ghetto in 1940, Marek, like hundreds of thousands of Polish Jews, was sealed behind its brick walls. He was given a simple school notebook by his mother, the last birthday gift he would ever receive from her. Cut to a montage of cramped ghetto streets. Inside those walls, Marek began writing, not because he wanted to be remembered, but because he wanted to feel like a child for a few minutes each day. Today, Mama said we cannot walk near the wall. The guards get angry. I saw a sliver of sunlight over the top. It looks warm. I miss warm things. The walls are too high for the sun to come inside. Children are not supposed to write sentences like that. But Marek, like the other 90,000 children in the Warsaw Ghetto, lived in a space where childhood quickly evaporated. The diary is filled with ordinary details, but in the ghetto, even the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Marek describes hunger, not as a feeling, but as a character. Cut to diary page. Hunger is like a friend who won't leave. He sits with me when I wake up. He follows me to bed. When I sleep, he whispers in my ear. The camera pans slowly over a street littered with debris. This diary reshaped how historians interpret children's psychological resilience during the Holocaust. It shows that kids were aware, painfully aware, of everything around them. The soldiers yelled today. They took Mr. Stern's bread and hit him with the gun. I don't know why they hate us. I asked Papa if we did something wrong. He said no. He said the world is sick, not us. A single line like that carries more weight than 100 history books. Marek captured the moral confusion of a child confronting brutality without the vocabulary to describe it. This passage shattered the assumption that children in the ghetto remained hopeful or unaware. Marek knew. He understood far more than adults believed. Lines like these help historians understand the psychological numbing that occurred in children exposed to relentless trauma. Marek's diary is now used in multiple Holocaust psychology studies because it reveals emotional shutdown at an early age. Marek never wrote again. He and his father disappeared during the liquidation of the ghetto. His diary was later discovered in the rubble by members of the Wang Shabbat underground archive team, the same group that preserved Jewish documents so the world would know the truth. It revealed that childhood did not simply end in the ghetto. It was stolen. Pause. Footage of a lone candle. And that is why Marek's diary stands among the most important and most heartbreaking documents of the Second World War. If Marek's words moved you, please share this video. These diaries survive only if we keep telling their stories. Stay with us. Part 5 is coming next, where we explore a diary found inside a crashed Luftwaffe aircraft and the shocking truths it reveals. Not all wartime diaries were written on the ground. Some were written above the clouds by men who found themselves trapped between loyalty, duty, and conscience. A gloved hand opens a charred notebook found near the crash site. This is the diary of Franz Keller, a Luftwaffe pilot whose private writings shattered the myth of unwavering Nazi loyalty. Section A, who was Oberleutnant Franz Keller. Archival shots of Luftwaffe pilots preparing for missions. Franz Keller was born in Munich in 1916. By age 22, he was flying reconnaissance missions over Poland and France. By 1942, he was an officer on WWII Tanto in the Luftwaffe. Publicly, Keller was a model pilot. Privately, he was a man falling apart. His diary was not a heroic chronicle of victories. It was a confession, one written between missions, folded inside his flight jacket, never intended for anyone else to read. Up here, the sky feels clean. But every time I land, the world feels darker. The things we bomb. The things we see. No metal can wash the hands. Cut to aerial footage of bombed towns. This excerpt reveals Keller's early moral conflict, remarkably rare in Luftwaffe writings preserved from the time. For decades, propaganda painted German pilots as patriotic, enthusiastic warriors. Keller's diary exposed a different truth. Many were conflicted, terrified, and quietly horrified. In September 1942, Keller flew an attack run near He described what he saw beneath him. There were shapes running in the streets. Not soldiers, children with white cloths. I climbed. I told command the visibility was poor. I lied. I could not fire. Silence. This moment became the centerpiece of Keller's transformation. he stopped seeing targets. He started seeing human beings. In the mess hall, some pilots talk loudly about glory. Others are silent, staring at their boots. I think the silent ones understand. But none of us dare speak. The walls have ears. A chilling statement follows. If the war is just, why do we fear telling the truth? This line has been quoted in multiple modern studies because it directly challenges the belief that Nazi airmen were ideologically uniform. Keller wasn't a hero of the resistance. He wasn't a spy. He was simply a man asking the right questions. In the wrong regime. The harsh winter of 1942-43 broke many German units. Keller wrote an entry that remains one of the most disturbing pieces of Luftwaffe testimony. We delivered supplies today. Not enough. Men fought over crates like starving animals. One soldier cried while eating snow. Another cursed Hitler. I pretended I didn't hear him. Maybe the snow will bury all of us before the truth does. Long pause. This entry shows the collapse of morale, and more importantly, the collapse of belief inside the German ranks. Historians now cite this diary as evidence that despair was spreading months earlier than previously documented. On February 14, 1943, Keller flew a reconnaissance sortie over the Eastern Front. According to Allied reports, his engine was hit by anti-aircraft fire. The aircraft spiraled and crashed in a forest. He died instantly, but the fire did not destroy the notebook tucked inside his jacket. If someday someone finds these pages, know this. Not all of us wanted this war. Some of us were just too afraid to stand alone. I hope history will be kinder to those who doubted than the war was to those who obeyed. Fade to an empty hangar. No sentence in any Luftwaffe personal writing has been quoted more often, because it reveals something simple and uncomfortable. Many German servicemen were not loyal Nazis. They were men trapped by fear, silence, and an unforgiving machine. Keller's diary challenged decades of assumptions. It forced historians to riconoscere Luftwaffe morale, internal dissento privato. Doubts among officers the human cost of ideological pressure, the psychological burden of air war, is now studied not for its military details, but for its honesty. This was not a diary of a hero, not a diary of a villain, but a diary of a human being caught between orders and morality. If you want more forgotten human stories like Franz Keller's, make sure you're subscribed. Your support helps bring these lost voices back to life. Part 6 is coming next. A diary written by a nurse in a makeshift underground hospital, where life and death were separated by only a curtain. Some diaries were written in hospitals, some in bunkers, but this one was written beneath a city that had become a graveyard. Cut to archival footage of destroyed Manila. 1945. This is the hidden journal of Rosa Santos, a Filipino nurse whose underground writings revealed one of the most brutal and overlooked atrocities of the entire war. Bye. The start of 1945. Manila was a city under siege, not by a single army, but by history itself. As American and Filipino forces advanced to liberate the Philippines, retreating Japanese units responded with chaos and fury. Civilians were massacred. Homes were burned. Entire neighborhoods became killing zones. In the middle of this nightmare was a 26-year-old nurse named Rosa Santos. She worked not in a proper hospital, but in a series of abandoned drainage tunnels turned into an improvised medical shelter. And down there, in the flickering half-light, she kept a secret diary. We can hear the city burning. The tunnels shake. The children cry at every explosion. I can smell smoke even underground. If this diary survives, let it tell the truth. Manila is dying. This was not the voice of a soldier, not a voice of politics. This was the voice of a woman trying to save lives while the world collapsed overhead. Her diary was hidden under a loose stone and rediscovered only in 1967, when workers cleared debris from the old drainage system. It changed how historians understood the Manila massacre. Rosa describes treating more than 200 wounded civilians with no anesthetics, almost no clean water, and makeshift tools, babies delivered in darkness, amputations performed with dull knives. Mothers crying beside dying children. I have stopped counting the dead. I write their names only so they do not vanish entirely. Some are so young they cannot tell me who they are. One diary entry lists 17 children who died in a single night. The youngest was 18 months old. Rosa's underground hospital was not safe. Japanese troops searched for hiding civilians and often executed them on sight. One entry reveals a moment that historians had long suspected but lacked direct testimony for. We heard boots above, then voices. They were checking the manholes. We covered the children's mouths. I held one baby as if she were my own. We waited for the lid to lift. It didn't. We survived by a single breath.
This entry confirmed eyewitness rumors that dozens of civilians survived because patrols
simply didn't notice the hidden entrances. In early February 1945, Japanese units began executing civilians by the hundreds. Rosa heard it all helpless. Underground. Narrator VO, excerpt the screaming is endless. I think of running outside to help, but the others stop me. One mother tried to climb out. She was shot before she reached the street. Cut to dim footage of empty streets after liberation. Her diary gave historians some of the earliest, most detailed descriptions of the violence, including the destruction of hospitals, the killings in Intramuros, and mass civilian executions. This was not military reporting. This was a human being recording horror in real time. There is one entry so emotional that even historians sometimes struggle to read it aloud. A boy came to me with his sister. He carried her on his back. She was already gone. He didn't know. He asked if I had milk for her. I told him she was at peace. He said, "No." She is sleeping? He sat beside her for hours until he fell asleep too. Silence. A long, respectful pause. Entries like this changed how scholars understood the psychological trauma of Manila's children. On March 3, 1945, Rosa's tunnel was discovered by Allied troops. She ran out carrying 2 wounded children, one on each arm. Her diary ends with the most hopeful sentence she ever wrote. We saw the sun today. But the moment of relief is followed by tragedy. Rosa did not survive the aftermath. She died 2 months later from infection and exhaustion. Her diary is now considered one of the most important personal records of urban civilian suffering in World War II. Rosa's journal provided civilian accounts of the Manila massacre, documentation of makeshift medical practice, descriptions of hiding civilians, evidence of Japanese search patrols, testimony of families destroyed, the internal life of a nurse whose courage had never been recorded. Her diary transformed Manila from a footnote into a human story, forcing the world to confront a tragedy often overshadowed by larger battles. These are the voices that war tried to silence, but because their words survived, we can still hear them. Stay with us. Part 7 reveals a diary from a prisoner of war, a man who recorded a truth even his captors never intended to reveal.
By the start of 1945, Manila was a city under siege, not by a single army, but by history itself. As American and Filipino forces advanced to liberate the Philippines, retreating Japanese units responded with chaos and fury. Civilians were massacred. Homes were burned. Entire neighborhoods became killing zones. In the middle of this nightmare was a 26-year-old nurse named Rosa Santos. She worked not in a proper hospital, but in a series of abandoned drainage tunnels turned into an improvised medical shelter, and down there, in the flickering half-light, she kept a secret diary. We can hear the city burning, the tunnels shake, the children cry at every explosion. I can smell smoke, even underground. If this diary survives, let it tell the truth. Manila is dying. This was not the voice of a soldier, not a voice of politics. This was the voice of a woman trying to save lives while the world collapsed overhead. Her diary was hidden under a loose stone and rediscovered only in 1967. When workers cleared debris from the old drainage system, it changed how historians understood the Manila massacre. Rosa describes treating more than 200 wounded civilians with no anesthetics, almost no clean water, and makeshift tools. Babies delivered in darkness. Amputations performed with dull knives. Mothers crying beside dying children. I have stopped counting the dead. I write their names only so they do not vanish entirely. Some are so young they cannot tell me who they are. One diary entry lists 17 children who died in a single night. The youngest was 18 months old. Rosa's underground hospital was not safe. Japanese troops searched for hiding civilians and often executed them on sight. One entry reveals a moment that historians had long suspected but lacked direct testimony for. We heard boots above, then voices. They were checking the manholes. We covered the children's mouths. I held one baby as if she were my own. We waited for the lid to lift. It didn't. We survived by a single breath. This entry confirmed eyewitness rumors that dozens of civilians survived because patrols simply didn't notice the hidden entrances. In early February 1945, Japanese units began executing civilians by the hundreds. Rosa heard it all, helpless, underground. The screaming is endless. I think of running outside to help, but the others stopped me. One mother tried to climb out. She was shot before she reached the street. Cut to dim footage of empty streets after liberation. Her diary gave historians some of the earliest, most detailed descriptions of the violence, including the destruction of hospitals, the killings in Intramuros, and mass civilian executions. This was not military reporting. This was a human being recording horror in real time. There is one entry so emotional that even historians sometimes struggle to read it aloud. A boy came to me with his sister. He carried her on his back. She was already gone. He didn't know. He asked if I had milk for her. I told him she was at peace. He said, "No, she is sleeping." He sat beside her for hours until he fell asleep too. Silence. A long, respectful pause. Entries like this changed how scholars understood the psychological trauma of Manila's children. On March 3, 1945, Rosa's tunnel was discovered by Allied troops. She ran out, carrying 2 wounded children, one on each arm. Her diary ends with the most hopeful sentence she ever wrote. "We saw the sun today." But the moment of relief is followed by tragedy. Rosa did not survive the aftermath. She died 2 months later from infection, and exhaustion. Her diary is now considered one of the most important personal records of urban civilian suffering in World War II. Rosa's journal provided civilian accounts of the Manila massacre, documentation of makeshift medical practices, descriptions of hiding civilians of Japanese, search patrols, testimony of families destroyed, the internal life of a nurse whose courage had never been recorded. Her diary transformed Manila from a footnote into a human story, forcing the world to confront a tragedy often overshadowed by larger battles. These are the voices that war tried to silence. But because their words survived, we can still hear them. Stay with us. Part 7 reveals a diary from a prisoner of war, a man who recorded a truth even his captors never intended to reveal. Some diaries survived fire, some survived bombings, but this next diary survived starvation, torture, disease, and death itself. Cut to archival footage of the Burma Railway, emaciated prisoners carrying wooden beams. This is the secret journal of Sergeant Thomas Hale of the British Army, a prisoner of war whose hidden writings exposed brutalities the world refused to believe. Hale was captured during the fall of Singapore in February 1942, one of Britain's worst military defeats. He was transported to Burma, then transferred again to a Japanese labor camp on the infamous Burma-Thailand Railway. The men called it the Death Line. For every mile of track laid, hundreds of prisoners died. Thomas Hale began writing there, not with ink, but with a sharpened bamboo sliver dipped in charcoal water. He hid his diary inside the hollow leg of his wooden bunk. The smell hits you first: sweat, blood, sickness. A man died beside me as I slept. We lined up at dawn to bury him. No prayers, no names, just mud. Cut to footage of prisoners digging rough graves. For decades, historians lacked detailed day-to-day accounts of early Burma camp conditions. Hale's diary was the missing piece. The diary describes forced labor from sunrise to sunset, in monsoon heat, with little food or water. One entry stands out: "My hands no longer feel like hands. They are bone-wrapped in grief." Hale recorded how prisoners worked while burning with fever, malaria, dysentery, cholera, illnesses that swept through the camps like wildfire. Hale described a guard known simply as Tiger. He was a Korean conscript, serving under Japanese officers, a fact rarely documented in British memoirs at the time. Tiger strikes without warning. He hits men for stumbling, for coughing, for praying. We fear him more than hunger. This entry later helped historians identify patterns of abuse across several camps. Verifying survivor testimonies, Hale wasn't writing a political document. He was writing the truth no one else dared preserve. Despite brutality, there were moments of human kindness, rare, fragile, and desperately needed. One Japanese guard, Sato, gave us an extra ladle of rice today, he whispered. Don't let them. See, I never thought mercy could taste like warm grain. This simple line became an essential reminder that World War II was never a story of pure black or white, but of individuals trapped inside unimaginable systems. One of the most extraordinary revelations in Hale's diary is the existence of a secret camp school. Prisoners held nightly lessons in mathematics, mechanics, Shakespeare, and even philosophy, whispering so quietly that guards wouldn't hear. We study not to remember the world, but to stay human inside this one. This was one of the earliest first-hand confirmations of these underground educational networks. There is one entry that historians often cite as one of the most heartbreaking POW testimonies ever recorded. A Scotsman named Alistair is fading. He asked me to write his wife's name on my page, Margaret, he said. Don't let the world forget her. He died an hour later. Camera shows the name Margaret written in shaky strokes. That single line became the symbol of Hale's entire diary, a record of men who refused to disappear. Hale was discovered one night helping a sick prisoner move. The guards accused him of disobedience and threw him into a punishment pit, a coffin-sized hole covered with bamboo slats. He spent 3 days in darkness. His diary entry is barely readable. I screamed, but no one came. Then I stopped screaming. I thought, if this is death, it is quiet. This passage is now quoted in multiple academic works on Japanese POW camps, a rare direct account of pit confinement. By mid-1945, Japan surrendered. Survivors were skeletal, barely recognizable. Thomas Hale weighed 39 kilograms when rescued. When Allied medics searched the camp, they found the bamboo sliver, the charcoal, and the hidden diary inside Hale's bunk. He lived until 1969. He never published his journal. It was released by his family decades later. Hale's diary provided the most detailed daily descriptions of camp life, early documentation of Korean auxiliary guards, evidence of underground education, networks' first-hand descriptions of pit punishment, emotional testimonies from unnamed prisoners, the human perspective far beyond military. Reporting it helped expose what would later be recognized as some of the most extreme prisoner abuses of World War II, but above all, it taught historians one timeless lesson. Even in places built to destroy humanity, people fought to remain human. If you're still with us, thank you. These stories deserve witnesses, and you are one of them. Stay tuned. Part 8 is the grand finale where all 6 diaries come together to reveal the larger truth about the war and about us. 6 diaries, 6 voices, 6 lives trapped inside one of history's darkest moments. And yet, their words survived, not because of politics, not because of armies or generals, but because someone, somewhere, remembered. Cut to slow close-ups, Els Vandermeer's crumpled pag, Zelensky's childlike handwriting, Franz Keller's charred. Luftwaffe Notebook Rosa, Santos Underground, Diarrhytimus Hale's bamboo-scratched entries. In a war defined by destruction, death, and silence. These diaries were Act S of defiance. Els wrote to understand Terra. Marek wrote to survive. Franz wrote to question Rosa, wrote to save Livstamas, wrote to bear witness. Every line, every scratch of ink is a bridge connecting the past to a archival montage. Pages flipping, hands holding old notebooks, candlelight reflecting off faces of modern students reading them. These diaries prove a simple truth. The human spirit can endure even when everything else falls apart. Despite differences, age, location, circumstance, allegiance, all diaries share certain themes. Fear and innocence. Els and Marek remind us how children perceive death, destruction, and uncertainty. Moral conflict. Franz shows that even soldiers in oppressive regimes can question right and wrong. Courage and care. Rosa demonstrates heroism in the face of overwhelming helplessness, humanity under torture. Hale reminds us that even in captivity, hope, compassion, and knowledge persisted. These are not just stories, they are mirrors reflecting what war takes and what it cannot destroy. Why study these diaries today? Because history is more than battles, strategies, or statistics. It is lived by ordinary people. And remembering these lives matters not only to honor the dead, but to understand the cost of human conflict. Trauma is intergenerational. Elle's family legacy. Marek's lost childhood. Blind obedience can lead to moral collapse. Franz's struggle. Courage manifests in small, almost invisible ways. Rosa saving children. Witnessing injustice is itself an act of survival. Hale documenting atrocities. Each diary is a thread in the fabric of memory. If we lose them, we lose part of our humanity. History often feels distant, but when we hear Elle's whisper through her words, when we see Marek asking questions that adults couldn't answer, when Franz doubts himself in the sky, when Rosa fights for life underground, when Thomas scratches letters in darkness, history becomes immediate, intimate, unforgettable. It is no longer a story in a textbook. It is a shared human experience. Today, these diaries reside in archives and museums. Historians study them. Students learn from them, but beyond the academic. Their legacy is moral and emotional. They challenge us to confront injustice. They remind us that silence is dangerous. They inspire courage to speak, to act, to care. They show that one voice, even a child's, even a prisoner's, even a nurse's, can outlive bombs, bullets, and decades of attempts to erase history. Elle's diary dissolving into dust that transforms into a field of candles. Marek's pages floating down a street, merging with sunlight. Franz Keller's notebook closing, the sky reflecting through clouds. Rosa's tunnel lantern lighting the faces of children she saved. Thomas Hale's bamboo sliver held gently by modern hands. Each diary is a testament, not to war, not to armies, but to the courage, suffering, and resilience of ordinary humans, people like you and me. In studying these diaries, we are reminded that history is not just dates and battles. It is hearts beating in the dark. It is voices whispering through ruins. It is the hope that someone, someday, will listen. A single candle flickers on screen, then fades. If these voices moved you, honor them by sharing their stories. Subscribe to our channel to continue exploring the hidden truths of World War II every 2 days. Comment below which diary left the deepest mark on you. We read every response and preserved their memory together.